Mr. Raskin and Mr. McGovern have both talked about stopping the threats, take down the wanted posters. I would ask you to publicly then ask your side to stop threatening members of Congress. If you're concerned about threats, there are threats to Republican members of Congress from your side. Yes, there's wanted posters. I will get you copies of them because there's wanted posters of Republicans in their districts. And if you are concerned about threats, maybe we should talk about all the threats. There's one of our Republican members there's a guillotine set up in front of his office. You don't think that's a threat?
I haven't seen a guillotine since January 6, 2021.
It's my time, and there is one. And I am asking you both right now to publicly renounce, say, stop the threats against Republican members of Congress.
To the extent that's happening, I'm not aware of it. I would absolutely denounce and renounce any threats against any member of Congress.
Thank you. And I would hope that you would talk to your folks about stopping those threats because they are real.
Give me a specific example.
We have members who have to wear. Yes, it is about. They brought up the threats, ma'am.
Yeah.
This is and
Madam Chair, I'd like to say
it is my time.
Will you please denounce Trump for sending a mob here on January 6th?
January 6th is not happening right now. The threats are happening
Nobody
right
denounced
now.
that on your side.
And it's my time, ma'am, sir. But I would suggest that when you start talking about these threats,
yes,
that you talk about both sides. And I suggest that you talk to your side because you have been talking about January 6th for a very long time.
Will you denounce the threats against the judges?
I don't think anyone should be threatened. I don't think there should be wanted posters out there. But these are serious. I mean, we have members who have to wear bulletproof vests because of the Democrats coming after them.
Well, but I've had,
so I
have several judicial restraining orders against people who have threatened me. So I can relate to what you're talking about.
Then you need to talk about all of them instead of sitting here in front of us saying that this is threats. And so I appreciate that you are going to denounce them and you're going to work with your side.
I'm quoting the Chief Justice of the United States of America who wrote about it in his annual report.
You talked about the threats. You brought it up. And they are serious against members of this body, Republican members of this body. And so I would appreciate it when you start talking about those things that you talk about both sides.
You're aware that Democrats have received those threats too. So
I recognize that all of us have.
Then we should all denounce it. We should all work against it, not just in the legislative branch, but the judicial branch as well.
I think the threats and what has been going on to our Republican members of Congress in the last month or so is inexcusable. I mean, when they have the guillotine out in front, they're having to wear bulletproof vests because of the threats against them. And I recognize there's other threats, but this is right now, this is coming from an organized group of Democrats who are doing this. Yes, it is. Okay.
Well,
it absolutely is. You can go on and look online because it's right there.
That could lead to something like January 6th, where 140 of our officers were wounded and injured. And so we should stop it.
I'm reclaiming my time because I am talking about things that are happening right now that can be stopped. And with that, I yield my time.
Look, we get it. Federal judges in 46 cases have blocked Donald Trump's executive orders and policies as unconstitutional or illegal. The judges ruling in these cases were appointed by 5 different presidents, Republican and Democrat alike, in 11 different district courts across 7 federal circuits. The courts have explained in painstaking detail what is unlawful about these orders and policies, and Trump has offered no substantive critique of their legal reasoning. He just says the jurists deciding are, quote, radical left judges, including Chief Judge Boasberg, the Chief Judge of the D.C. District Court, who was nominated to the bench first by President George W. Bush and was Justice Kavanaugh's roommate at Yale. Some fanatics are now attacking and threatening the judges and even their family members, like Judge Boasberg's daughter or Justice Amy Coney Barrett's sister, who got a bomb threat a few weeks ago. Some Republicans are calling the jurisprudence of these courts judicial warfare and are trying to impeach these so-called rogue judges, and some Republicans, like my friend Mr. Issa, are now trying to change the ability of courts to issue nationwide injunctions, something that Republicans took generous advantage of themselves in the last administration. The No Rogue Rulings Act would effectively ban district courts from providing nationwide relief against unlawful executive actions because litigants could request injunctive relief only with respect to themselves. For every American citizen to get protection against a president's illegal actions, each citizen would have to go to court and bring his or her own case. If this had been the law when Trump tried to revoke the 14th Amendment right to birthright citizenship by executive order in January, the judge would not have been able to stay implementation of the order nationally while the case worked its way to the court. Even though the executive order was, quote, blatantly unconstitutional and struck down by 4 separate judges, one nominated by President Reagan, one by Donald Trump, one by Joe Biden, and one by Obama, every affected person or family would have had to bring their own separate personal lawsuit because the district court injunction could only apply to the actual parties in the case. This bill is totally unworkable. Our judicial system of 94 different federal judicial districts could not handle the tidal wave of litigation that would necessarily follow. If you do the math, and you just had one person for every federal district in the country, it would take 12,220 attorneys to replicate the work of the original case, and then 12,220 defending prosecutors for the Department of Justice. Do the math. This is wholly unworkable. And of course, many people wouldn't have the resources to bring their own case, and thus would be deprived of their rights and freedoms under federal law and the Constitution until the Supreme Court could rule. The whole idea of suddenly blocking nationwide injunctions because Donald Trump is losing every single day in court defeats the whole concept of the rule of law. Just as justice delayed is justice denied, justice circumscribed is justice circumvented. This is a principle Republicans not only endorsed, but took liberal advantage of in the last administration. Remember Judge Matt Kaczmarek of the Northern District of Texas? Republicans were lining up around the block to get cases against the Biden administration before him and praised the nationwide injunctions that he issued. They've even inserted a carve-out provision in this bill to ensure that he can still issue nationwide injunctions in a case currently before him. So don't tell me that this is a principle about nationwide injunctions. Even though Judge Kaczmarek was several times reversed, we never tried to ban the power of judges to issue nationwide injunctions, or at least I did not. These are essential judicial tools. We did try to stop the outrageous practice of judicial forum shopping, and Madam Chair, I would submit to you that's a real problem we could work on together. But our colleagues humiliated by this unprecedented losing streak in federal courts across the land should not try to convince themselves that there's something wrong with the courts. Read the opinions and you'll see that there is something wrong with the utterly lawless executive orders and policies lifted out of the Project 2025 playbook. Of the over 150 cases filed against the administration, some form of injunctive relief has been ordered in only 46 cases, and of those, only 17 were nationwide, or 1/3 of them, which shows that the courts are appropriately balancing all of the factors in the different cases. I call on my colleagues to take down the wanted posters with judges' faces on them outside of offices and House office buildings, temper their discourse when it comes to judges who are just doing their job, stop the calls for impeachment, and oppose this very unfit bill. Thank you, and I yield back.
Of course we would denounce political violence. I'm unaware of any wanted posters. I have seen a lot of missing posters, like on the side of a milk carton, referring to Republican members of Congress who are refusing to meet their constituents. But turning back to the issue at hand here, I think we're all concerned about the fact that we have this authoritarian playbook occurring where in order to undermine civil society and undermine the rule of law, the accepted way to go about that is you attack the media, you attack the universities, and you attack the courts. And this proposed bill seems to be another way to attack the courts. I mean, if the president, as you rightly pointed out, if the president doesn't want to lose in court, he should follow the Constitution. I was really struck by the fact that forcing, everybody impacted by the birthright citizenship overreach order would just cause mass chaos in the courts. I mean, you want to talk about fraud, waste, and inefficiency.
Right.
I mean, forcing hundreds and hundreds of cases every time there's one of these issues seems to be a prime example of it. Did you want to say anything else on that?
Judges shrewdly and sparingly use the nationwide injunction, and they use it in cases where it would be an absolute burden on judicial economy to have hundreds of thousands or millions of people going to court. For example, a lot of people are upset about the potential conversion of their private data, like it's Social Security. And then there was a federal court which said that DOJ could not take people's Social Security data and needed to destroy the data that DOJ had taken. Why should that have to be litigated by, 200 million Americans who don't want their data corrupted or prostituted in that way? So, hey, look, the Chairman Issa is a very smart man. I've gotten to know him pretty well in my few months in the Judicial Committee. I think he understands that you don't impeach judges because you disagree with their opinion. You appeal, right? And and so I think that this is analogous to that. We don't need to change the rules of civil procedure, to amend the rules of civil procedure to block out this tool that judges have at their disposal. It has not been misused.
I would agree with you on that, and it's just kind of making me blanch as a former attorney, thinking about every single American having to go up against Elon Musk and the U.S. government in order to kick Elon Musk and his buddies out of your own private data. I mean, that's just a total recipe for disaster. I believe there are other proposals on how one could address some of these nationwide suits. I mean, this is a pretty broad one that would basically eliminate, with the exception of the one very conservative judge who is already doing this kind of a case. So can you just comment on the selective nature of this bill with respect to what nationwide injunctions it's going to allow and those that it would not?
That's why I would love to hear from our friends a specific case or a group of cases that they think really should not have the benefit of a nationwide injunction. I mean, like on the Social Security data case, that's something that clearly has national implications, and it would be a ridiculous waste of judicial resources to be hearing that hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of times, just like birthright citizenship. That's a very clean constitutional issue. The first sentence of the 14th Amendment says all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States. So how many times do you need to litigate that basic legal question? And of course, it's for a temporary period anyway. It's going up to the Supreme Court, but it says we're going to have a stay in deference to the rights of the people before the Supreme Court can get a hold of it. I don't think a single one, and again, I'll stand corrected by my friend Mr. Issa, I don't think a single one of these nationwide injunctions, which again is just 1/3 of the injunctions that have been issued, has been reversed by an appeals court. And so I go back to what Chief Justice Roberts said. The proper way to deal with this, if you think somebody's got it wrong, is you appeal the decision. You don't try to impeach the judge or change all the rules all of a sudden.
Ms. Scanlon, I could answer your question if you'd like.
Sure.
There were 17 of the cases that have been brought so far that for one or two reasons would not have been covered by this bill.
And are those mostly involving the use of mifepristone and medical abortion?
No. In most cases, these were brought and the judge did a national injunction, but only as to the parties before him. But in another case, the judge did in TGG versus Trump, he certified a class action. And that wasn't something that we did because of a previous administration. It's because class action lawsuits have historically included a class that went beyond one circuit, one district, and as a result, they did have national repercussions. So out of the first 38, 17 would in fact not be covered by this bill. We did limit multi-circuit and class action because historically those are viewed differently. And because a judge, we want the efficiency, and I think Mr. Raskin said it fairly well. We wouldn't want to have them have to go to 100 different districts. There are two ways that you can get a nationwide injunction historically. One is multiple different circuits applying before one judge, or, quite frankly, to paraphrase the Supreme Court Chief Justice, if in fact you go to just two judges and you get two outcomes, you then have a case for the U.S. Supreme Court. And that, by the way, is historically how it's done.
I need to reclaim my time because I see the chairwoman checking the clock, and I know she's trying to rein all of us in.
Unanimous consent request before you do?
Just in conclusion, I'm very aware of the strain that this kind of thing would put on our courts, but I'm more concerned about the strain that it puts on the people whose civil rights are being violated by these orders, and the burden it puts on them to each one get representation.
No, I think, we had this exchange before Ms. Fishbach left, but I do want to ask unanimous consent to insert in the record. This is one floor below my office, in front of Representative Ogle's office, wanted posters of judges. It says, "Known Get Trump Judicial Activists Wanted." And this is the kind of stuff that some of us are asking there to be universal condemnation about. I mean, this is threatening to these judges. It has no place in the halls of Congress. I ask unanimous consent to it.
Not only would we want that, but
without objection.
this committee has had a
And I
long
would yield
history of
back.
providing security. We are currently redacting the addresses and other information. So the one place that you'll find we won't be in front of you except united is on the security of the judges.
Can we get some agreement that members who put these posters up in front of their offices will take them down?
I don't believe we should be putting up pictures of judges.
And I thank Mr. Issa for saying that. I would hope also that all of the calls to impeach judges because members disagree with their opinions should be retracted, or at least that should cease immediately, because that is creating the climate in
We
which
should all be able to condemn this.
I think everybody should condemn that. I'm glad to hear Mr. Issa agrees that that should not be going up. But I think the whole thing about talking about impeaching judges who ruled in the birthright citizenship case, or impeaching judges who are protecting our Social Security data, is very dangerous. And look, Judge Boasberg's daughter has been the subject of an online campaign of vilification and intimidation, and Justice Barrett's sister got a
Thank
death
you,
threat.
Mr. Raskin. Thank you very much. I want to say, but I believe for all Republicans, we do not condone any calls for violence against anyone. Anyone. We do not condone any calls for violence against anyone. Period. Mr. Langworthy, you're recognized.